First things first, your wheel speed is going to be controlled by this pedal on your right hand side. It's like a gas pedal for a car. Press it away from yourself to increase the speed, and pull it towards yourself to slow it down. When you're happy with the speed it's set at, you can take your foot off the pedal and it will continue rotating for you. I'll set the speed at the beginning of class, so you guys don't have to think about this unless you want to. It's just something you can play around with. And in case something goes wrong, just press down on the pedal to stop. Now that that's out of the way, I want to cover the most important things that you always want to think about as you're working on your body. There's only two. The first one is going to be the placement of your elbows. This is absolutely crucial. I always want my elbows to be resting on a part of my body, like so. It can either be in my hip area, this is where I like to keep them, or resting kind of like along your legs and spine too. So long as they are anchored on part of your body. The reason for that is that as you're pressing against clay, these elbows here are secured to help keep your hands stable. If my elbows are up here, I don't really have that control or support, so I'm more likely to make a wobbly pop. Second is going to be water. If you touch clay without water, it's very dry, it's tacky, it's pulling my fingers, really, if I'm not trying to keep it in place. So to avoid that, use water to lubricate your piece. You can either scoop it like this with your hand, or just take a sponge and add it like so. What I want to caution everybody on is being over excessive with adding water. So like adding it every 2 times that you're touching the piece, or that, which is just, 1, it makes a big mess, and 2, it's unnecessary. The other problem with this is that, like the sponge, clay will absorb water as you work with it. And it will actually reach a point where it becomes oversaturated, where it can't take in any more water. At that point, your piece will start to basically crack and collapse. It becomes harder to work on. So you want to avoid that just by, when you feel that dry, sticky friction, take a minute, add some water, and continue on. So following along so far? Alrighty. Basically, just keep your elbows tucked in, be more modest with water. Now that that's out of the way, we can start shaping our piece. First thing I'm going to do is mark my center point, the exact middle of this one. That's eventually where I'm going to make a hole in my body. To mark my center point, I'm going to take my elbow and anchor it, like I showed you before. I also like to hold my wrist for support. Using the pad of my index finger, I'm going to place it close to the top here. I'm pressing horizontally, moving towards the middle. I'm not pressing super hard as I'm doing this. Using just enough force that I'm leaving an impression in the clay. And when I start to see a circle, roughly the size of a dime, I'm going to take my hands off. Any clay you get in your fingers can be wiped off in your bowl, reflecting your splash pin. It doesn't really matter where it goes. We'll show you that one more time. Adding some water to the piece, as well as my hand. I'm anchoring my elbow, holding my wrist for support, using the pad of my index finger, pressing horizontally towards the middle. And again, I'm not pressing super hard as I'm doing this. I'm not trying to make a hole or shake the pot too aggressively. Just enough that I'm leaving a line for myself. And that looks pretty good. So, this is going to be our starting point for when we make a hole. Before I do that, however, I want to mark my depth, how deep I'm going to go. If you go all the way to the bottom of your wheel head, let's say make a really bad clay bottom, or a really bad hole. Laugh at my bad jokes, or your pots don't get made. Okay. Also, if you look at the holes over here, you can see that we've got these feet turned into them. Leaving that allowance of clay at the bottom is what gives us that ability to turn that foot. So I always like to leave a little more clay than less, because you can always take clay away, but you can't add it back. So take 2 fingers, place them on your right hand side, and where the top finger is resting, you can either press in with your index finger like so, or use the back of your thumbnail to leave a line. And this just gives us a rough idea of how deep we need to go with our finger. It can be a little higher or a little lower. I'll check it before we move on to the next step. Now, I've marked my center point, I've marked my depth. Now I'm ready to make a hole in my piece. To do that, I'm going to add water to the entire lump of clay, as well as wet my right hand. Just like before, I'm going to anchor my elbow and support my wrist. Instead of pressing horizontally this time, I'm pressing vertically, going straight down from the starting point here. I'm not pressing super hard with my finger. You'll feel it just kind of get swallowed up by the clay. And then I'm starting to add more pressure once I've got that hole started. I'm about halfway in, but I'm stopping because I feel that dry, sticky friction I was talking about before. If you ever feel that, just take your hands off the piece, add some water, and then continue on. Don't try to power through. Alright. Entirely optional too, but once you've got your hole started, you can go in with 2 fingers. It makes the next few steps a lot easier, but it's not entirely necessary. So if you're not comfortable with it, you don't have to do it. Anchor your elbow, support your wrist, just continuing the same motion, going straight down. And I think I'm roughly there at this line I've set for myself here. So I'm going to take my hands off the piece. Now, before I go on, you see this little high point I've made here? It's not an accident, and it's something we want to avoid. You see how it's starting to fray and crack? That's what happens when you make your pot too thin. The walls are really weak structurally. Fortunately, this is really easy to fix. So I'm going to take a lightly damp sponge and pressing down quite firmly. That removes that high point and it smooths out the whole piece. Similarly, if I knocked my work by accident with my thumb or dinged it with a tool, I can just take a lightly damp sponge, apply some pressure over the whole thing, making it nice, smooth, and even, like nothing happened. Sponge fixes everything, basically. Okay. Now, I made a very narrow opening in my pot. If we looked at it from a cross section, it would look like this. We need to widen that out now so we can fit a hand on the inside of this piece of clay to work on it further. To do that, I'm going to keep my hands in the same position like they were in the input, but I'm no longer pushing down. I'm going to keep those fingers nice and straight, and using my forearm, I'm pulling this hand towards me, like so. It can help to kind of claw your fingers a bit like this. Basically, we're trying to pull it out to a nice 90-degree on the inside. So, everyone following along so far, by the way? All right, cool. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to stop me. It's a lot. So I'm going to add some water, wet my right hand. Just like before, I'm anchoring my elbow, holding my wrist for support. 1 or 2 fingers going straight to the bottom here. Now using my forearm, I'm pulling towards myself. And I only need to widen this out enough that I can fit my hand on the inside of it. So you don't need to push it much further than this. I'll show you that one more time. Magic. I'm pretty great. I'm kidding. What's like a good pottery magician? Chris Angel Mind Freak? Anybody know that guy? Yeah. He was like a weird goth dude. He was also a magician. He was really bad. I thought he was so cool when he was a kid. Anyhow, let's say that didn't happen. I'll do it again. Anchoring my elbow, supporting my wrist, 2 fingers, 4-1, going straight down, using my forearm to pull towards myself. If you have a hard time doing this, you can always claw your fingers to make it a bit easier to grip. The thing you want to be cautious on is I never want to just pull my hands out like this. You want to keep your fingers dragging consistently. Create that nice 90-degree angle on the inside of the pot. Now, I'm going to check my bottom. Because this is going to be the base of our piece, it's a lot easier to clean this up now than when we have a really tall vase or a really wide bowl. So I'm just going to make sure it's nice and flat. And this one looks pretty good. Say though, I left a bunch of marks. I wasn't even when I was pulling it out. And it looks kind of janky. We want to smooth that out. So I'm going to take a damp sponge like I showed you before, and just press moving from side to side. Give myself a nice, smooth foundation. Can everyone see that okay? Just pressing, moving back and forth. Alright, that looks pretty good.
Moving, sorry, back and forth, like kind of up and down? Or?
No, like so I'm on the bottom, moving side to side. This is a good thing to mention. So I'm only working on this half of the clay.
Yeah.
Because of the direction of the wheel's spinning, you always want to position your hands on a side where the clay is moving away from your hand. So if I put my hands here and I tried to do any of the same stuff, I'd have a really hard time. Because the clay's moving towards it, there's a lot more resistance. It's pushing against my hand as opposed to moving out or off of it or away from it. So if you are left-handed, and you find that naturally, or you find naturally that you're more comfortable working on this side of the wheel, let me know and I'll change the direction for you so we'll move in the opposite direction. All right, so Now that we've evened out our bottom, it's nice and wide, we can start to pull this into a cylinder. To do that, my hands are going to be in two different positions. I'm going to take my right hand and make a fist. With my index finger, I'm going to extend that into a knuckle. With my left hand, I'm going to make a finger gun. Pew pew. To position these hands, I'm going to place my right hand at my 3 o'clock, and my left hand is going to place parallel to that hand. With my thumb, I'm going to connect these two pieces. You want to make sure your thumb is connecting because it ensures that your hands are moving in sync. If one's up here and one's down here, I have a hard time maintaining an even pull. So it's really important to keep those hands connected. Once my hands are on the piece, I'm going to squeeze them together and then raise my hands up. So I'm going to squeeze and then I'm going to raise straight up towards me. It's kind of an alien concept, so let me demo. I'm first going to bring my fingers in, and then I'm going to slowly raise them straight up. And when I get to the top here, I'm not pulling my hands directly up like this. If I do that, I'm more prone to pinching the rim. You want to let go away from yourself. That ensures that the form stays consistent and even. I'll show you that one more time. Adding water to the inside and outside of the piece, as well as wetting my hands. Right hand makes a knuckle, left hand makes a finger. You can also, you don't have to keep your fingers like this. You can also use 4, but you're just pressing the pads of these 2. Your index and your middle. Starting at the bottom. So you'll notice on this one, you see that bulge that's forming here? So that's where my fingers are pushing out. The knuckle is keeping this contained as a cylinder, so I'm always pushing harder with this hand, the one on the outside of the piece, to keep it retained as a cylinder. If this becomes the dominant hand, then you start to make a bowl, and we don't want to do that. So always pushing a bit harder with your knuckle, squeezing and slowly raising up. And again, when I get to the top, I want to let go gently. Again, if you pull, you can do this and pinch your rim. If that ever happens, I can always come out with this pin tool right here and cut it down to size. So, at this point, we have a pretty giant mug. A couple cups of coffee at least. If you wanted a mug with a handle, let me know ahead of time. I'll show you how to make one. It just means you have a little less time with it. If you want to make a Yunomi, a Japanese style teacup, I can show you how we can do that too. You can also add swirl lines or finger indentations to make it more custom. I'll show you that now. Those are like swirl lines, those are kind of fun. Or finger indent, something like this. So you can kind of, it's kind of fun. If you guys want to make a vase, I'll show you some steps separately, just because it's a bit more personal and custom to the form you're trying to make. So, again, I can always cut the form down if it's too big, or maybe the rim is uneven. Now, say you didn't want to make a mug or a vase, say you want to make a bowl. Bowls are always made from a cylinder like this one. You never try to widen them out as you're pulling. You do them in 2 separate steps. So you set your thickness at a cylinder, and then you widen it out. Something else that's important is you want to leave the cylinder a bit thicker, because as you stretch it out, so will the walls thin. So you want to compensate for it at this point. The key difference between shaping a bowl versus anything else we've done today is that all of the work in shaping this is going to come from the hand on the inside of the cylinder. My outer hand is going to touch the clay, but it's not applying any pressure or doing any sort of major motions. It's just touching as a support to keep the pot stable. Everyone following along? Mm-hmm. There's 2 ways we can shape it. The first one, I'm going to make my hands into an alligator, like so. And they're going to change from my 3 o'clock position to my 6 o'clock. Again, the inner hand is doing all the work. I'm using the pad of my middle finger to do a scooping motion towards myself. Scoop and raise. As I'm getting to the top, I want to press harder to make sure that's the widest part of the bowl. And I'll show you that now. anchored elbows, crocodile. Starting at the bottom, I'm going to curl my finger in a scoop motion. This is where it gets weird, but you can power through. And gently let it go. So that's one way you can shape it. Just like the cylinder, you can gradually work it until you're happy with the overall form. Ah, there we go. Try to get away from me, huh? Another way, the way I prefer to shape curls, is using this tool, which is called a rib. These are excellent because you can see they already have a curve built in. So they take a lot of the shaping out of it for you, or a lot of the work of shaping it out. To use it, we're going to go back to that 3 o'clock position. I'm going to hold it with my left hand. I'm going to push it towards my right hand, which is holding this pot as a support. Keep in mind, again, I'm not applying any pressure with this hand. It's just touching and almost moving away from the clay as it comes into contact with it. I'll show you that. You can see how the shape of this changes. Alright, that looks pretty good to me. Nice serviceable bowl. There's a few other things you can do to make it nice and clean now. First off, I'm just going to take out the water on the inside, make sure it's a nice curved bottom. And say you guys want to do a flared out, which is more traditional for ramen bowls or flat pots. To do that, I'm going to hold the finger on the outside. That's going to mark where the flare of my rim stops. I'm going to take my inner hand and I'm going to curve it towards this finger until they're almost parallel. That's getting wobbly there. It's that dry, sticky friction that you want to avoid. So don't be like me. Add water, take your hands off the piece. Just that. Too edgy. And that's how you get a nice little flared out rim. You can also decorate that a little further. You can do like a clover rim, so I'll show you that now. You can't play around with that string like that. And that's the basics of it. Looks pretty easy, right guys? I'll show you one more thing, just to make sure we're all on the same page here. So, you can see the cross-section of the piece I just made. If your piece doesn't look exactly the way you want it, remember that we're trimming a lot of this excess clay away. So you can see that the base is quite wide, but we're going to trim this into a foot, as well as add a foot ring. So a lot of this clay is coming off, such as this part, that part, and that part. A lot of this is being removed once you're done here today. I also want to show you guys that cross-section when I do a pulling motion, just so we all understand that. So again, say this is a cylinder. My right hand is going to make a knuckle, my left hand is making a finger gun. Making sure they're connected. I'm going to start at the bottom, where I'm going to squeeze, and then raise my hands straight up. I'm going to squeeze and raise. The 2 most important things you want to think about when you're doing this motion is that you always want to start moving in one direction, from the bottom to the top. You never want to push down at any point. The second is, no matter how slow I'm moving, I always want to continue my motion up the piece. I never want to stop. If I do stop and I continue to squeeze my hands, I create a weak point. So that's not to say that you can't leave your hands on the pot as you're working, just that if you need to take that break, stop applying pressure or take your hands off, get a breather, add some water, and continue on. Make sense? I hope so. Okay. Let's run through the steps one more time while I'm setting up this lump of clay, just to make sure we all understand what we're doing today. So, from that point, how do we mark our center point, the dime-sized circle at the top of the piece?
So you anchor your hand, and then you support it, and then you just put your thumb on the clay foot that would make dime size.
Yeah, absolutely. You can use your thumb or your index finger, whatever is comfortable. How do we mark our depth? Yeah, let's hear it.
2 fingers from the bottom.
2 fingers on the side of the pot. You can press in with your index finger or use the back of your thumbnail to mark it. Alright, from that point, how do we make a hole in our pot once we have that dime size? Let's see it from you?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see it. Yeah, so we're not going to press horizontally this time, we're doing what?
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. We're going to press vertically, straight down. Okay. Once we've made that very narrow opening in our pot, how do we widen it out so that we can work on the piece of wood? Our hands are going to be in the same position like they are for making the hole, but we're not pushing down anymore. What are we going to do? That's for the bowl. You're close. So we're in this position, but we're not pushing down anymore. We're going to do what to widen?
Pull towards
We're
it.
pulling with our forearm towards ourselves. Now, once we've widened it out, our base is nice and even. We're ready to turn that lump of clay into a cylinder. Our right and left hands are going to be in two separate positions. What is the position our right hand is going to be? Knuckle, perfect. And left hand? Ah, take my money! Sorry, that's low-hanging fruit. Perfect. Now, once we have a cylinder and we decide we're going to make a bowl, we can either use a rim tool, pushing towards our right hand, to shape it. What is the other hand position we can use to widen the bowl out? You have it. Yeah, let's see. Here's the scoop, yeah. Raise your hand, here's the scoop motion. Problem. Alright, I think you guys got this. Let's just do one more crash course to make sure we all understand each other. So, dime-sized circle on top, how do we make it? Pressing horizontally, moving towards the middle. Perfect. How do we mark our depth? 2 fingers on the side. Perfect. How do we make a hole in our pot?
Straight down.
You got it. Straight down. Perfect. Now, once we've made that hole, how do we widen it out? Yes. Yes. All right. You guys got this. All right. When we once we widen our hole, we're ready to make it into a cylinder. What is our right and left hand? What's the position those 2 hands are going to be?
This one.
Perfect. Yes, that's excellent. All right. And then what is one of the ways that we can shape our bowl once we are widening it out? We can either use a rim tool or crocodile. Perfect. My least favorite reptile. They're scary. All right. You guys are all good. You 2 over here, you 2 at those wheels over there, and you 2 over there.
Cool.
You guys can rest your elbow more comfortably. Here you go. Would you mind lifting your leg, please? This will just give you a bit more leverage. No problem. That's excellent. So you're going to tuck that elbow in, support that wrist. You're going to start from the top there. Yeah. Don't go too hard. It's going to just naturally sort of slot in.
I think that's there.
There you go. Now start to push. Yeah, it feels really weird, right? That's enlarge that. Now I'm going to get your hand here. There we go. Remember, you don't want to go past this line I've set for you right now, okay? You doing okay over here? Remember, if you feel that dry, sticky friction, to add water. How are we doing over here? Yeah, you can try to go with 2 fingers now. It's weird. It's gonna get really weird, okay? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's what we're after.
Yes.
Okay, that sounded really creepy. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
You doing okay over here? Try to go with 2 fingers once you get that hole started. You guys are ready to make a hole. Mine's fine. It's a fine line. All right.
As I was pulling.
Okay, a couple things here. So, excellent job widening it out. A couple things we want to avoid here.
Okay.
See this one a little far? It's not a huge issue. You see this high point?
Yeah.
Just press down with your sponge to remove that first. There we go. So, now, you see that we've got this kind of mountain forming in the middle?
Yeah.
So, you're going to take out that excess water. Now what I want you to do with this damp sponge is you're going to press move from the center to this side to create a nice smooth bottom.
Sure.
You can press a bit more for widen your hole out. So I want you to take 2 fingers. Yeah.
This
hand right.
Yeah, 2 fingers, and you're going to widen up.
Yeah, I need to wire open.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I'm doing that.
now pull with your forearm towards. Yeah.
My wrist is a bit.
Only the finger top or the whole finger?
The whole finger.
The whole finger.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yes, I'm doing that.
May I give you a little assistance to show you how much pressure?
Oh, okay, sure.
Just put your fingers in.
Oh,
I think maybe I'm 2.
No, you got this.
Oh, okay.
So put your hands in.
Yeah.
Now start your pull.
Oh no, we do.
Support your wrist. Perfect. Now start your pull.
That's to bring it up.
Yeah, on do.
That's pressure, right?
That's the kind of pressure we're
That's
on.
okay.
See how you were doing so good.
I know.
I'm so proud of you. Alright, you don't need to
You
widen
were-
that out anymore, you just need to clean up that base. Yeah.
Custards.
You're suffering from success. I once proud papa. Alright, so we can still make this into like a pretty dope mug. You down with that?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring this back to a cylinder and we're going to try doing it all together. Alright. So, I want you to just position your hands on the piece so I can see what you're doing.
Oh.
Yeah, right hand's knuckle, left hand's a finger gun. Perfect.
Put this way.
Excellent. Now put your hands on. Now start to squeeze and slowly raise. Good. Then when you get to the top, gently let go. Outstanding. That was it. That was it. So what I can see right at the end there is you kind of had a bit of hesitation.
Yeah.
So just remember, on that let go, when you get close to the top here,
Yeah.
just let go opposite each other.
Okay.
Let's see you do one more. A little less pressure. Keep going. That's good. That's good. That was it, man. That was great. Huge improvement. Great pull.
I think so.
It looks amazing. Do you like that it's curved in, or do you want to like widen it out?
That's wide.
You want it like that?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. I'm gonna take it off the wheel for you. So, for you,
Yeah.
you're perfectly wide on the base, and it's nice and clean as I can feel. So you did a great job there. Now we're ready to do a pull. So I'm gonna bring this back to a cylinder for us, and then we're gonna do it together.
Okay.
Okay. So now I want you just to position your hands on the pot, and then I'm gonna tell you if we're in the right position.
Right position.
Yeah. So knuckle, finger gun. Perfect.
I think I didn't like. Oh.
That's what we're doing.
I
So
think
make,
sometimes I was told like. if I-
okay. So make sure your thumb is connected.
Like this.
Good. Oh, oh, take your hands off that. I'm gonna help you. No, squeeze and slowly raise.
Slowly raise me. Oh,
That's good. Keep going. Gently let go. Take your hands off. Perfect. So, you see that with my hand there? All I was doing was just guiding the speed at which you're doing. So your pressure's good.
Okay,
But just-
was stopping.
Yeah, so again, if you feel like you need to stop, that's totally fine. Just take your hands off, or ease off on pressure, add some water, and continue on. So,
Do I still need to raise it? Or
you can.
impressive.
That doesn't
No,
sound
like,
like a compliment.
no, I should. Okay, impressively thin. I meant that to be a compliment.
Oh, okay.
Especially for beginners,
That's fair.
oftentimes the more challenging thing to do is to make a thick pot thin.
Yeah.
You have the opposite of success, basically.
Oh,
So,
see?
we can round. You're being quite liberal. So I'm taking my hand, I'm making a circle motion like this. I'm very gently pulling. I'm using almost no pressure with my hands. It's almost the opposite of when we were doing our centering and shaping. Very gently pulling, and you can see it's starting to gradually get longer. Once it starts to get a bit longer, I'll change from a circle to a duckbill. And that kind of tapers the handle, makes it a bit more convenient to hold. You can also press down with your thumb to create a resting point for your hand as you're holding it. Let's take a handle.
Nice. Wow.
Thanks for the hype.